as we know, according to the Serbian famous expression, the whole world is Russia except Kosovo. Kosovo is Serbia. Is it true?
Yes, of course, of course.
Your name is Slobodan. It is certainly a very common name in Serbia. And the last leader of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, had the same name. He tried to prevent the country from splitting up. For this, he was declared a dictator and a tyrant in the West, and later sentenced to death by Hague Tribunal. In Russia, he is seen as a hero who died for the truth.
My wife is from Moscow, so I had a good companion in that, because with all respect to you, Anna Borisovna, the biggest problem are women. Women.
As usual. All problems worldwide started with the woman.
There is common Orthodox brotherhood of nations. Russia naturally leading that Sloven Christianity. Now Russia leads the whole world of traditional people, even Muslims, even Orthodox, even on the West.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.
Hello, dear friends. This is the Dynamic Spectrum Talks podcast on air, the place where we talk to interesting guests from all over the world with the aim of finding common ground between peoples and nations, understanding each other better and breaking down artificially created dividing lines. I'm Anna Shafran and this is my colleague Yuri Lindra.
Greetings.
And today we have a video call with Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, perhaps the most Russia-friendly country in Europe. And let's meet writer and publicist Slobodan Stojcevic. Slobodan, glad to see you.
Thank you that you invited me.
Slobodan, the first question we would like to ask you is related to the attitude that Serbia in general and the Serbian people have towards Russia, because nowadays Serbia probably the only European nation that rejected sanctions against Russia and still support our country and remain friendly ties. Please tell us, how do you perceive these attitudes from the Serbian side towards Russia? Is it true right now, or there are also some changes? Because as we know, according to the Serbian famous expression, the whole world is Russia except Kosovo. Kosovo is Serbia. Is it true?
Yes, of course, of course. Well, just the little difference, because we have that attitude to Russia whole history. We are brothers during the ages, 1,000 years, So our relations are not depend on political situation in this moment, So that's the only difference, Now, some parts of the society in the West, maybe they approve some kind of some part of the politics of the Russia in these days. Maybe they didn't approve the Russian policy 10 years ago or 20 years ago. With Serbs, it's different. We are one nation, one religion, during the ages, and this attitude doesn't depend on nowadays politics, We had the same attitude maybe 100 years ago when white Russian army came here. We have the same attitude to the Russia 30 years ago during the 90s when Russia had the problem with the regime, and we have the same attitude maybe 300 years ago. It's not depend on the daily politics.
Your name is Slobodan. It is certainly a very common name in Serbia. And the last leader of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, had the same name. he tried to prevent the country from splitting up. For this, he was declared a dictator and a tyrant in the West, and later sentenced to death by Hague Tribunal. In Russia, he is seen as a hero who died for the truth. And what is the current attitude towards Slobodan Milosevic in modern Serbia and towards you personally?
Well, how to say, personally, I was, during the 90s, I was against Milosevic regime. To be honest, that's my great sin, so I need to confess. Regrettably, because we thought, I personally thought, we are whole my generation here in Serbia, in former Yugoslavia, is educated during the 80s and 70s and 60s, As a matter of fact, after 1948, 1948, there was a problem between former president of Serbia, of Yugoslavia, Tito, and Stalin. So after 1948, there was a good attitude to the West, let's say that way. We had some kind of middle socialism, not so strong as the Soviet Union and Warsaw Bloc. So we all educated in Western values, and of course, when the whole this problem with the global reconfiguration start 1990. Of course, that Milosevic had one policy, and part of my generation had the other attitude. We thought, same as Russians thought, and other countries, we thought that it's just enough to quit with the socialism and communist ideology, and everything will be okay. We will be one great family of independent nations. Let's say that way. So as a matter of fact, here in Serbia, we had the same problem as you had, and you have maybe even now in some part of the citizens, that we don't see the global problem besides daily politic problem. We were watching the daily political problems with economy, with the sanctions from the West, and we watch the corruption during the Milosevic regime, and we were blind to see behind that problem the global geopolitical problem. So personally, I was against, and I was happy when Milosevic finished his ruling, 5th October of 2000. But after that, we thought that everything will be wonderful, that we will start, well, same as like in Russia after, during the 90s and 2000, we thought that we will be normal, independent nation among other independent nations, so. But of course, we realize that it's not like that, that there is a bottom line behind the daily problems which we saw, So of course, most of the people turn off, from there, because when we realize that joining the Europe, joining the global nation community means that we lose our nationality, that we lose our religion, that we lose our way of life, So of course, most of the people, maybe in a public, most of the people don't mention that very often, but of course, that attitude to Milosevic is quite different now than it was 25 years ago. And what about my personal? Of course, is the same as most of my generation from Belgrade. I mean, people who of my generation who speak English, who speak foreign languages, who went to the West. Most of the people who went or moved for permanent to the West. So it was the same with me. And after a couple of years living abroad, I decided that life doesn't have sense if you just if you just have work and waste and life of the small common person in the West who is deeply in credits, in debts, it's not for me, that you spend your life, just as a small consumer, which make earn and spend and pay taxes, So I decided, to come back to Serbia with my wife. My wife is from Moscow, so I had a good companion in that, because with all respect to you, Anna Borisovna, the biggest problem are women. Women.
As usual. All problems worldwide started with the woman.
That makes life interesting, Without that problem, it will be boring, So
Definitely.
the point is that most of the, no kidding, I even spoke with my very good friend. He's priest in Australia, and when I wanted to come back, I spoke with him, and I asked, what you think about Australia and that, and he said, you see, for living it's quite okay, but for business it's a big problem. I asked, well, everybody speaks that there is a good business, And they said, yes, for the ordinary people, but I am a priest, and when they come from Serbia, first couple of years, they are normal, and then after that, mostly on the first place, women are impressed by the commercial, by the consumering, and I have for example, the women. She came, and asked which praise you have on the action this week, and what praise are on discount this week and that, So they are fascinated, We are. It's a whole industry, and one person can't fight with that. It's too big. You are starting to be part of the huge way of life. And it's practically impossible to keep your family. So I decided, and thanks to God, I have a clever woman. So we decided to come back. And of course, children. Children without grandmother. It's not children, it's a small consumer, as a matter of fact.
So the grandmother and grandfather, they need to look after the kids because otherwise parents could not make it right. Am I correct? There should be a double check.
Yes, of course. Well, you spend all your time or most of the time at the job, and practically you leave your kids, your children, to educate to the society. It's not doesn't different, in what country of the West you live, concretely. But most of the time, and nowadays, 20 years ago there wasn't mobile phones and smartphones, But now it's completely like that, You are simply leaving it's the same like to leave a child to kibbutz in Israel, They are educated. Now kids are educated by the phone, So there is a huge problem, and grandmothers and grandfathers are the way how to transfer the heritage and to moral values and everything, So I'm quite happy.
So in Russia and in Serbia, we have the same opinion about grandmothers and grandfathers.
Yes, of course. That's the opinion of whole normal world, That's something what is normal and common, during the ages and centuries, So the problem is that it's something new. It's coming from the West, and we are. It's not so strong on the personal level when you have small kids, and when you don't have a time and maybe capability to discuss about that and to think about that. You are just swimming over and over, But when you think a little bit, you find out, and that's wonderful that we have Russia, because maybe 20 years ago you couldn't say that to anyone, That was on the personal level, everybody choose the way how he will live further and how he will educate the children. But now Russia start, that global world war of ideology. So thanks for that to Russia.
Slobodan, let me conclude the topic of the past related to Slobodan Milosevic times. We know, and you know, that in the 90s, Russia was very keen to establish better relations with the West, and everything that was related to foreign policy was in the line with the mainstream approach of the West. But there was a interesting fact that Serbian case was the only where in the 90s we in Russia opposed to the West. So first of all, we didn't support the bombing, the shelling of Yugoslavia, and also we tried to support your government, support Yugoslavia. Basically, two questions in one. How do you think, was it possible to prevent the split of Yugoslavia to save the country? And the second question, do the Serbian people, the Serbians, remember that Russia, even during these difficult times, was with you, with Serbians, and did everything it could, in these particular circumstances in the 90s, to prevent from these drastic changes that happened with the NATO intervention?
Well, I'll split the answer on two levels, if you allowed me. So there is some national strategic directions, of that, and on the level of the ordinary people, as I said before, we have our relations, Serbs and Russians, for ages, and even in the Middle Age, in a 11th, 12th century, we had a relation, and our empires have the relation with the Russian empires and everything, So 5 or 10 years, in this history, it's nothing, as a matter of fact. Every normal person understands that, of course, the feelings of Russians to Serbs doesn't change, Well, politics was that we can speak about 1940s, when there was Stalin in Soviet Union, and here was Tito, and they had some arguing about inside communist problem in relation, So we can't compare, history relation of two nations, and to scrolling down to the level of two political politicians, So I don't think that there is a big problem about that, Of course, there was that was time like that, in Russia, you had your problems, we had our problem, we had fight. I even wrote one article about that, that it was I had subject about Russian world, and they asked me to write about that. So I took a liberty to myself, and I wrote that Russian world, it's not something what it's based in Moscow obligatory, There was a time when white Russians, came to Serbia. Maybe you don't know, whole army of Wrangel.
Baron Wrangel.
Serbia. Yeah. Well, his army was escaped to Turkey, and after that, they didn't know where to go from Turkey. And our king in that time, Alexander, he was educated in St. Petersburg in empire's army, and he accepted whole army. In that time, whole that Russians. We are usually talk about some dukes and some aristocracy, but there was thousands, hundreds of thousands of ordinary soldiers, and they came, all of them to Serbia. It was a couple of hundreds of thousands came to Serbia. Even even in that moment, Russian officers got the same position in Serbian army as they had in a Russian army. So we had here the colonels, generals which served in a Serbian army. King Alexander had the idea to make Orthodox Empire and one day to liberate Russia. So hundreds of thousands of them lived here, and in that moment, practically the idea of Orthodox Russia lived here in Sremski Karlovci, 100 kilometers from Belgrade. There was maybe you heard about Russian Orthodox Church abroad. It's made here in the 20s of last century. On the other hand, during the 90s, for example, we fight against globalism, and during the 90s there was Yeltsin in Russia. So we can say, now, for example, Russia is leading the Orthodox community of nations, even against Greeks, which are fall down, I hope temporary. So we can't judge in this daily politic measure, there is common Orthodox brotherhood of nations. Russia naturally leading that Sloven Christianity. Now Russia leads the whole world of traditional people, even Muslims, even Orthodox, even on the West, some Orthodox, some traditional people which belong to other religions, So it's much bigger than we usually watch, And on the ordinary level of the ordinary person, maybe some people think this or that, but it's obviously that Russia can't support somebody else in the moment when she needs to be supported by herself, So it was a moment in the history during the 90s, and what to do, So like in the Second World War, like in the First World War, there is a moment, there is offensive, defensive, You can't, and nobody, I think, in Serbia, reasonable person, it's more than 90%, that doesn't blame Russia for that, It was, of course, there is a people, there was maybe a person who count on discussing on that, what you did, what you didn't, what you could do, but it's not serious, It's the most important is that there is some basic values. If we accept that basic values, then we are part of the one common family of nations. And on the first place, we have for example, the Bulgarians, they have the same problem, We usually, Serbs, we are a little bit envy on Bulgarians, because usually during the history, they are more friendly to Russians, they know how to ask for the help, and they know how to use the geopolitic possibilities, to be liberated, because Russians wants to get Istanbul and that things, we remember that. But on the other hand, what you can do, that's the destiny of the and our Christ told us that we will suffer, and that without cross there is no salvation, So we can't blame Russia because she is that's what she is, It's a great country and great nation and great civilization. We are part of that civilization, and we just need to suffer together. If you suffer together, then you will later on be together in a glory. And if you are like some other nations, serve Russia when she is strong, then you serve West when it's strong, then tomorrow they will serve Chinese when they will be strong, It's not a question of daily orientation.
Today, many people call Belgrade the new capital of Russian immigration. After the 1917th revolution, Paris was called that. In both cases, the immigration was mainly oppositional to the current leadership in Russia. The question is, what do these people do? Do they make a positive contribution to Serbian society? And how do the authorities and ordinary people in Serbia feel about them?
Well, it's a quite interesting question, but it's maybe I'm a person like that. I see always some couple levels on every question. And maybe on the first place, we can say that this immigration nowadays, it's quite different than Russian immigration in 1920s. 1920s, that was completely another immigration. They came here because they couldn't stay in Russia, and they was suffering without Russia. They went to church. They made, even here in Belgrade, church. These was decent people. Maybe the aristocracy went to Paris, but most of the people, of common normal people, Russian soldiers, even with the families, they stayed in Serbia in different towns, and and they made a wonderful influence on Serbia. They made Serbia better, to be honest. We have even my wife even translate, some books about that. There is it's about the contribution Russian immigration to Serbian society during the 20s, 30s, and 40s of last century. There was great architectures. Serbian ballet was made by the Russian ballerine dancer. My youngest daughter is ballerine dancer, so I know because of that. And so it's a great impression and influence on the Serbian society made by the white immigration in the last century. These days, kids, liberal kids, which came to Serbia, they are not even near, to that people which came in the last century. Last century there was big people, people with integrity, people with educated people, and that. So this time from Russia escape boys and girls, which are grown among good life in Russia during these last 20 years, and they are simply not very connected with the reality, as a matter of fact, to be honest, and that is the attitude of Serbian society to them. First, maybe half a year, everybody was happy that Russians come. There is another. Maybe I can be open with you, so I'll tell that. There is even probably some agreement between Russian authorities and Serbian authorities. Let them be here, not to make problems in Russia. Better to mess here than there. So probably that's the reason why they got visa and permission to stay and everything, because simply it's quite okay to isolate that toxic part of the youngsters. Excuse me that I'm open with you, but we are friends, we can say that. Of course, they are here guests. These Russians in the last century, they came and they stayed because they couldn't go back to Russia, and they had nostalgia to Russia, and they made little Russia in a society here among them, and that is with that. These Russians lived in Russia, as far as I understood, like liberal young hoods, and they continue to live here the same way, to order the food from the restaurant. They discuss about the websites about how to this. They are work mostly over the internet. They are founding some jobs on the internet, and they didn't became part of the Serbian society. Now they have them restaurants. Now they have them hairdressers, pet hairdressers. I don't know. They live completely. For us, the Serbs, it doesn't influence very much, because it's obvious that they will. Big part of them are going back to Russia because they realize that there is no mobilization, that there is no dangerous to be picked up to the army, and mostly they, as far as I can see, most of them earn much less than in Russia because, of course, they are nothing special. In the majority of them, they are common girls and boys, which live good because they are in Russia and there is a good economical situation in Russia. When you put them to the market, human resources market, as they wanted, they realize that they are not so capable, like most of the kids, they're simply consumer, which work to spend. So part of them going back to Russia, part of them went further to wash dishes in the West, and part of them are, for now, stay here. They don't influence on the Serbian society. They are not something. They are not architects or some artists or some scientists, to give something. They wouldn't give anything to the Russian society or either the Serbian, either there is, of course, some capable people, very small percent, but they are not. There is not enough of them to make some influence. Serbs attend to them very good because they are Russians. Just after half a year of them coming, we all realized that in the beginning we expected to see them on the liturgy on the Sunday, either that they will organize some society of the Russians or something like that. It's nothing like that, You can organize them to around the ordering of sushi or about the ordering something over the internet, with delivery, but not about some more important spiritual values.
Well, you rightly mentioned that these people left Russia not because they were forced to leave, but because they wanted to be closer to the European Union, as now we have difficulties between Russia and European Union, the West in general, and of course, if they were consumers originally from the beginning, they want to remain their style of life and be closer to Europe, and they were looking something that will be more or less similar to Russia, but with much more Western influence than they might find in current situation in Russia. And following this line, I also want to ask you the following question. European Union, Russia, current difficulties. Serbia stands in the middle. From one side, you support Russia, you rejected to impose sanctions on the Russian Federation, but from the other side, your government, long time ago, many years ago, decided to go to the European path and someday to join the European Union. Of course, this issue is not currently on the agenda because the entrance to the common family of European nations, so-called European Union, is a longer journey, but still this is on the table. Is it possible to combine both tracks from your perspective? I mean, maintain friendly and cooperative ties with Russia and simultaneously go to the European Union. What do you think about it?
Well, I can answer what personally I think about that, and it basically is the same with on the national level, First, you need to understand one part of the question which you probably doesn't know, because of course normally you live in Moscow, in a capital of Russia, and that is. Things over here are quite different than you see from Russia. Angle of the watching of the problem from Moscow is quite different than if you live here, or in Europe or in other countries, If you allowed me to be honest, and I think that we can, because it's not ordinary, I don't know, slowly live on that level, Anna Borisovna came to the completely another level, much more intellectual level than it was, slowly live, it's not banalize the problems, So if you allowed me to explain that a little bit more deeper, there is a big problem with not with Serbia, either with the European community, it's problem with Russia, Russian Federation, as a matter of fact, doesn't have any soft power, to be honest, Usually people doesn't speak about that because it's a little bit, like inconvenient subject, but that's the point, There is no any soft power. The biggest problem is that Russia think about the foreign countries like about sovereign countries with the sovereign will of the nations. And it's, of course, it's with regret we can say that that's not like that, I suggest to everyone who want to think about that things, to watch. There was 2020. There was a meeting called Army 2020. Anna Borisovna was present over there, and there is a very short report, maybe 15 minutes from that meeting, and of course, except other participants, I mean Ashmanov, Kasperska, Nikita Mikhalkov, and the very, very interest is that what Yevgeny Primakov Jr. said, over there, he explained the complete problem, in 5 minutes, He said that was like at Ukraine, Russia support Ukraine in the last 20 years with the $200 billion of dollars. But that $200 billion of dollars was in a price for the gas, price for the fuel, and most of that was stolen by the oligarch of Ukraine. America spent not 200 but $5 billion of dollars, but they influence on the civil society in Ukraine with that $5 billion, and they changed whole marketplace, whole system. Yeah, they changed the academic society, they changed social, they changed political parties and everything, because they influenced exactly to some person, and they had the system how to do that. And after the changing of the system, then Russians stay with anything, and that's what he said, and I completely agree with him, So that's the point. There is no any influence from the Russia, because if you speak with the Russians, if you are Serb, for example, or Bulgarian, or Polish, or Ukraine, or I don't know, Turkestans, and you come to Russia, they are watching you like an alien because they don't understand what you want. Russian government have the policy to have relation with the authorities of another countries. They don't speak with the opposition parties. They don't speak with the society of other countries. They have the way of communication during the embassy, and they can speak with the parties. If you, for example, in Serbia, so now I'm coming to the answer of this your question, this part. This is something what you need to know to understand the answer of the basic question. Beginning of 2000, after the color revolution here in Serbia, we had more than 100 parties, political parties, most of them was patriotic parties. And there was some pro-European parties. During 20 years, pro-European parties and pro-European politicians had very good support from the West, and that support was complete. They had probably Excel files, with the politicians, with the parties, with everything. I wrote the book about that, so that's the reason why I know that. There is the courses, there is education, there is grants, stipends, everything. And in the first place, it's not so obvious. You can't notice that. You maybe think, well, person is capable, person is clever. That's the reason why he became, PhD. That's the reason why he have a so good career. But during the 20 years, if you watch, there is patriotic politicians, patriotic parties. During the time went to Russia, and all the time it was the same. We can't speak with you because you are opposition. Become somebody, and we will speak with you when you become somebody. And the political system, the media system, the academic system, the social system is like that you can't become somebody if you are not part of the system. So of course during these 25 years, most of the patriotic and traditional people, parties, societies, communities, which have orientation to Russia and to patriotic ideology, they are pushed to the margin of the society. Now, 25 years ago, you are watching and you see from like a flower shop, like flower shop, if you start slowly to put off, some kind of flower and to put, for example, cactus, and in 20 years you will have shop of cactus, not flower shop, because there wouldn't be any more flowers, Either there will be some trembled flowers in the garbage nearby the flower shop, If you understand, if I explain good, I don't know, do I express my thoughts in English good enough?
Fully understandable, don't worry.
So I can name you the dozens or hundreds of people, who are same as me, for example, who are I usually joke, we are like Jews in the Middle Age,
The old schoolers.
Yeah, you are doing something, I don't know, translation, something, free professions, something, and in your spare time you are doing something for what is important. And the other side, liberals, they are working for the salary the whole day long, And of course that during it's same like for example, you will have some wonderful bicycle, and on the other side you will have a tractor, So of course the tractor will, on the long term, will be better and will make. And now we have this situation, that when you watch from the outside, you see the parties. They are very, very careful about that, and they are very, very fulfill whole goals which they make. So what we have now on the public scene, on political scene, you have the authorities together with Vučić as a president, and they have pro-European values. On the other hand, you have parties which are in opposition, but they are pro-European too. So when you are watching from the point of view of ordinary citizen, you have two possibilities. One of these possibilities, pro-European, is together with pro-European, pro-Russian. Of course, it's understandable that it's out of sense, to be pro-Russian and pro-European and pro-Chinese and pro-American at the same time. But if you have whole TV channels, if you have whole magazines, everything, whole public scene is that. So it's same like if you are, for example, in a madhouse and all around speak that white wall is black, and sooner or later you can say, I don't know, I can't say what color of the wall, because all around doctors say that the wall is black and you see it's white, but what to do?
Yes, frankly speaking, we understand that if we want to unite these healthy people, mental healthy people all around the world, and these patriotic people, we have a lot of to do. Yes, a big field.
A lot of things to do, definitely.
Yes. The next question. Your latest book is called Hybrid War Against the Serbian Orthodox Church. What is it about?
Well, my previous book before that, it was about net war against Serbs. It's published in Russia. So I was investigate about how they make from the West networks in some society, And I explained that networks in the academic level, in journalist level, in media level, in academic level, economic level, financial level, and one of that net, which is made through society, is the religion level, because it was prepared to this what happened with the Greeks and with the problem with the Orthodox community of churches. So it was even 2019 and 2020 when I wrote it. It was before all these things. What is happening now? It's about the way how West start to influence on the Orthodox Church. Concrete, I wrote about Serbian Orthodox Church, but I explained the whole principles how they influence any religion, even Muslims, even Catholic Church, or either Jews, either that. It's about the grants which they give to the, for example, Greek Church to make some institutes for religion, and about the influence of the Western funds, non-government funds to Serbian Spiritual Academy of Serbian Orthodox Church, and how they made the whole net of liberal theologists inside the church, Serbian church. It's a project which is projected on 20-30 years, and now we have this. For example, just day before yesterday, we had the sample that one of the bishop of Serbian Orthodox Church, it was Sveti Sava, Saint Sava, the biggest Serbian saint, and he, for example, gave statement that for him, Saint Sava is a rocker. It's completely not understandable for normal Orthodox person, that Orthodox Vladika give that statement to the students which are demonstrating against the government, and to tell them that the biggest saint in history, it's a rocker. So that's the way, that's the subject what I spoke about, how they are founding these people, these students of theology, when they are young, how they give them grants, how they give them credits to go to the West to finish the PhD studies, and how to become professors of theology, and how on the end, 20 years after that, you have the spiritual elite, which put the main scene of the religious, and ordinary Orthodox believers are in defensive in that case. So that's shortly about this book. It's published in Shipkov, Alexander Shipkov, the dean of Orthodox University, published that. I'm very grateful to him, and it's possible to be found in Russia.
Slobodan, thank you very, very much for this very interesting conversation.
Yes, it was indeed very interesting, and unfortunately, we can only do the one recording, but we have a lot to ask about and to discuss, because we have definitely a lot of commonalities. The main goal is to find the common ground between people and nations, and I think for the first time I can say that between Russians and Serbians, we no need to find any common ground. We already stand on the same ground.
Yes.
We can only discuss about it.
Of course.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you and to communicate with so wonderful people from Moscow.
Hope to see you again in our program. Slobodan.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Goodbye.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.